The hotel ballroom smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and desperation, that peculiar combination of floral chemicals and the anxious sweat of people who'd spent 3 hours deciding what to wear. Sarah stood in the doorway, one hand gripping the strap of her leather satchel, feeling the cool metal of the buckle press into her palm. The air conditioning hummed overhead, too loud, fighting a losing battle against the body heat of 200 former classmates who'd all decided to show up and prove something to ghosts. A balloon arch in school colors, burgundy and gold, faded now like a bruise healing, framed the entrance. Someone had thought the balloons were a good idea. Someone always did. The DJ was playing Mr. Brightside because of course he was. The bass vibrated through the soles of Sarah's shoes, up through her legs, settling somewhere in her chest where old memories lived. Not her memories from this life, the one she was living now, at 35, her second time through these years. The other memories. The first time, when she'd been here before, wearing a dress she'd bought on credit she couldn't afford, heels that pinched, and a smile that hurt more than the shoes. She stepped inside. The click of her boots on the floor was swallowed by the music and the laughter, that particular kind of reunion laughter that was too loud, too bright, everyone performing the part of person who turned out fine. A waiter glided past with a tray of wine glasses, the liquid inside so pale it looked anemic. Sarah took one. The glass was warm. She didn't drink. "Sarah? Sarah Chen?" The voice came from behind, so high-pitched with the kind of surprise that sounded rehearsed. Sarah turned slowly, already knowing who she'd see. Memory was a strange thing when you'd lived through it twice. The first time, this moment had filled her with a warm flush of pleasure. Someone remembered her. Someone cared. The second time, older and wiser by deaths and decades, she just felt tired. "Melissa?" Sarah said, matching the brightness, playing the game. "Oh my God, you look amazing." Melissa Park did look amazing, in the way that money and a good dermatologist could make anyone look amazing. Her dress was navy silk, probably Vince, and her highlights caught the disco ball light like she'd planned it. She probably had. The first time through, Sarah had envied this polish, this ease. Now she just noticed the tiny stress lines around Melissa's mouth, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes. "So do you. Where are you living now? What are you doing?" The questions came rapid fire, the ritual interrogation of reunion small talk, but Melissa's gaze was already sliding past Sarah's shoulder, scanning for someone more important, more interesting, more worth her time. "Still in the city," Sarah said. "Consulting." The word was deliberately vague. She'd learned this time around that details were invitations to judgment. Better to be a mystery. "Oh, how nice." Melissa's attention snapped back briefly. "You should go get your name tag. They're right over there at the registration table. I helped design them, actually. See." She gestured to her own chest, where a glossy tag proclaimed Melissa Park. Class of 2007 inches in embossed letters, and with a miniature school logo and the words, "most likely to succeed" underneath. We added everyone's senior superlatives. Isn't that fun? Fun, sure. Sarah remembered her superlative. Most likely to disappear. The senior class had thought they were being clever, ironic. She'd been the quiet one, the one in the corner of every photo, the one who left parties early and never quite fit. They'd meant it as a joke. It had felt like a prophecy. And it had been. The first time. She'd disappeared into a mediocre job, a mediocre apartment, a mediocre life that had ended mediocrely in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers. At 47, alone, full of regrets that tasted like copper pennies in her mouth. But that was before. Before the do-over, before she'd woken up at 22, gasping in her childhood bedroom, to sunlight streaming through curtains she'd thrown away years ago, her mother's voice calling up the stairs about breakfast, before she'd decided to do everything differently. "I'll grab one in a bit," Sarah said, lifting her untouched wine glass as an excuse. "Need to make the rounds first, you know?" "Oh, totally. Catch up later." Melissa was already turning, already moving toward a cluster of people near the bar, her heels clicking out a staccato rhythm of dismissal. Sarah watched her go, then let her gaze travel across the room. The ballroom was set up with round tables covered in burgundy cloths, each with a centerpiece of gold roses in various stages of wilting. The walls were decorated with blown-up photos from senior year, the football team, the spring musical, prom court. In one corner, a slideshow cycled through more photos on a screen, faces young and unlined, full of futures they hadn't lived yet. In the back, near the bathrooms, was the registration table, and standing behind it, clipboard in hand, was Jessica Lynn. Sarah's fingers tightened on her wine glass. The stem was smooth, fragile. She could snap it if she wanted. She didn't want to. Jessica hadn't changed much. Same sleek black hair, though it was highlighted now with expensive-looking caramel tones. Same heart-shaped face, same dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. Same way of tilting her head when she talked to people, making them feel like they were the only person in the room, like they mattered, like she cared. Same talent for taking what wasn't hers. The first time through, Sarah had considered Jessica a friend. And not a close friend, Sarah hadn't had those, but someone who was nice to her, who said hi in the hallways, who'd invited her to sit at lunch a few times. Sarah had been grateful, so grateful that when Jessica had asked to copy her calculus homework, she'd said yes. When Jessica had asked to collaborate on the history project, Sarah had done most of the work and put both their names on it. When Jessica had needed someone to cover her shift at the campus bookstore so she could go to a party, Sarah had covered it. And when they'd graduated, when Jessica had gotten the internship at the marketing firm, the one Sarah had also applied for, the one Sarah had wanted desperately, Sarah had congratulated her. Had meant it even. Had told herself that Jessica deserved it, that she was more outgoing, more charismatic, more everything that Sarah wasn't. It was only later, years later, in that first life, that Sarah had found out the truth. Had discovered, through a chance encounter with an old professor, that Jessica had used Sarah's portfolio. Had submitted Sarah's designs, Sarah's ideas, Sarah's work, under her own name. Had built a career on stolen foundations while Sarah had scrambled for scraps. By then, it was too late to do anything about it. Jessica was successful, untouchable, and Sarah was disappearing. But this time was different. This time, Sarah had her own success. Real success, earned with her own hands, her own mind, her own relentless drive. She'd used her second chance wisely, had invested early in tech stocks she'd known would boom, had started her consulting firm at 25 instead of 39, had built relationships instead of hiding in corners. She'd traveled to Tokyo, to Paris, to Sao Paulo. She'd spoken at conferences. She'd been interviewed by Forbes. She'd become someone who didn't disappear. And she'd come to this reunion for one reason only: to watch Jessica Lynn realize what she'd lost. Sarah set her wine glass on a passing tray and walked toward the registration table. Her boots made no sound on the carpet now. She moved like water, like smoke, like something inevitable. Jessica looked up as she approached, and her face did that thing, that perfectly calibrated expression of delighted recognition. "Sarah, oh my God, is that really you?" "Hi, Jessica." Sarah smiled. It felt like putting on a mask, but she'd gotten good at masks. "It's been a long time." "Too long? Look at you." Jessica's eyes scanned her up and down, quick, assessing. Taking in the boots. Louboutin, subtle. The black silk blouse, equipment, classic. The slim-cut trousers, the watch, vintage Cartier, inherited from a grandmother who'd never existed in the first timeline but did in this one, because Sarah had saved her life with knowledge from before, taking in everything and calculating worth. It was what Jessica did, what she'd always done. "You look great too," Sarah said, because it was expected. "Oh, this old thing," Jessica gestured to her dress. Red, tight, expensive. "I just grabbed whatever. Been so busy, you know? The agency has been insane." She said the agency the way other people said the war or the plague, with weary importance. "I bet." Sarah glanced at the table, at the neat rows of name tags arranged alphabetically. She could see hers from here. Sarah Chen, class of 2007, most likely to disappear. The letters seemed to mock her even now, even after everything. "Let me find your tag." Jessica was already flipping through the box, efficient, organized. She pulled it out with a flourish. "Here you go." God, remember these superlatives? So ridiculous. Sarah took the tag. The plastic was cool against her fingers. The pin on the back was sharp. She looked at it for a long moment, feeling the weight of two lives, two versions of this night, pressing down on her shoulders. In the first timeline, she'd worn this tag, had spent the whole night watching people's eyes flick down to it, watching them read most likely to disappear, watching them decide she was worth exactly as much attention as that implied. Had gone home at 9:30, alone, crying in her car in the parking lot. Not this time. Actually, Sarah said slowly, turning the tag over in her hands, I don't think I'll wear it. Jessica's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. No? Why not? I don't know. It feels silly, doesn't it? We're not kids anymore. Sarah looked up, met Jessica's eyes. You can have it, if you want. The confusion on Jessica's face was immediate, genuine. Have your name tag? Sure. I mean, it's just a piece of plastic. Sarah held it out. Consider it a gift, for old time's sake. For a moment, Sarah thought Jessica might refuse, might laugh it off, might sense the trap, because this was a trap, carefully constructed, baited with ego and opportunity. But Jessica had never been good at sensing traps. She'd always been too confident, too certain that the world would give her what she wanted. That's weird, Jessica said, but she was already reaching for it, already intrigued. Why would I wear your name tag? Sarah shrugged. I don't know. Could be fun. Everyone's so caught up in who they used to be. Maybe it would be interesting to be someone else for a night. Someone who was most likely to disappear. Jessica laughed, but there was an edge to it. A challenge. I haven't disappeared, Sarah said softly. Have I? Something flickered in Jessica's eyes. Calculation, curiosity, the same impulse that had made her steal Sarah's work all those years ago. The need to take, to have, to wear someone else's accomplishments like a coat. She was probably already thinking about the conversation starter, the quirky story she could tell. Oh, this isn't even my name tag. Oh, my friend Sarah gave it to me. Can you believe it? We're so crazy. You know what? Jessica plucked the tag from Sarah's hand. Sure, why not? This is hilarious. She unpinned her own tag. Jessica Lynn, class of 2007, most likely to light up the room, and set it on the table. Then she pinned Sarah's tag to her red dress, right over her heart. Sarah felt something settle in her chest. A key turning in a lock, a domino falling. Perfect, she said. It suits you? Jessica preened, already distracted by someone else approaching the table. Sarah stepped back, melting into the crowd, and for the first time that night, she took a real sip of wine. It tasted like victory, like patience, like revenge served at room temperature in a hotel ballroom that smelled like industrial cleaner and the past. The DJ switched songs. Don't Stop Believin' now, because of course. Everyone knew the words. Sarah knew the words too, but she knew other things as well. She knew that Marcus Webb, standing by the bar in his too tight suit, would come over to Jessica in exactly 7 minutes. She knew because Marcus was exactly the kind of person who noticed name tags, who did his research, who'd probably already Googled everyone he thought might be worth networking with. And Sarah Chen's name, her real achievements, were very, very Googleable. She found a spot near the wall, half hidden by a decorative column, and waited. Waited like she'd learned to wait in this second life, with purpose, with intent, with the cold satisfaction of someone who'd played the long game and was finally watching it pay off. The music pounded, the disco ball turned, and Jessica Lynn, wearing a name tag that said Sarah Chen, laughed at something someone said, completely unaware that her night was about to get very, very interesting. Marcus Webb had been quarterback senior year, and he'd aged the way quarterbacks often did, thick around the middle, thin on top, but still carrying himself like he was the most important person in any room. His handshake was too firm, his cologne too strong, and his eyes had the glassy sheen of someone 3 drinks past networking appropriate. Sarah watched from her column as he zeroed in on Jessica, watched him check his phone, probably confirming whatever he'd found online, then approach with that particular stride of men who'd never learned that confidence and aggression weren't the same thing. Sarah Chen? His voice carried across the music. Holy shit. I didn't know you were coming. Jessica's head snapped up. She'd been talking to Amy Rodriguez about her kids. Sarah could see Amy's phone already out, photos queued up, that slightly desperate look of mothers who needed to prove their lives had meaning. The name took a second to register. Jessica's hand went to the tag on her chest, fingers brushing the plastic. Oh, actually, she started. Man, I've been following your work. Marcus barreled forward, oblivious. That campaign you did for Innovate Tech? Fucking brilliant. We tried to get my company to do something similar, but our marketing team doesn't have the vision, you know? Hey, can I buy you a drink? I'd love to pick your brain about brand strategy. Sarah sipped her wine. It was better now. Or maybe she just appreciated it more. The way Jessica's mouth opened slightly, confusion and opportunity warring on her face. The way Amy's expression shifted from polite interest to something sharper, recognition that the hierarchy had suddenly changed. That's... Jessica touched the name tag again. Sarah could almost see the wheels turning. Correct him? Explain the switch? But then she'd have to admit she was wearing someone else's tag. And why would she do that? Unless there was something to gain from being Sarah Chen. And Jessica had always been good at recognizing opportunity. Sure, Jessica said, recovering. A drink sounds great. Sarah's smile was small, private. The first domino. She moved through the crowd, accepting hugs from people who barely remembered her, making small talk that evaporated as soon as she walked away. The room was warm now, bodies packed tight. And someone had opened the terrace doors to let in the night air. It smelled like rain, still distant, gathering. Sarah? Sarah Chen? This time the voice was female, breathy with excitement. Sarah turned to find Priya Sharma, who'd been in her AP English class, who'd gone on to something in finance. Priya was holding a martini, very dry by the look of it, and her eyes were bright with the kind of recognition that meant she'd done her homework. Priya, hi, I can't believe you're here. Priya grabbed her arm. I was just telling my husband he couldn't make it tonight, emergency at the hospital, but I was just telling him about the TED Talk, the one about disrupting traditional consulting models. I must have watched it 6 times. We're trying to implement some of your strategies at our firm. Sarah blinked. She had given that TED Talk. He had spent 3 months preparing it, had been terrified the entire time. It had gone viral. 2.3 million views last time she checked, which she tried not to do often because numbers were a trap, but she hadn't expected anyone here to have seen it. Thank you, she said. That's really kind. Kind? It's the truth. And the Forbes profile? God, when I saw that, I texted everyone from the Mathletes team. I mean, I always knew you were smart, but I had no idea you'd... Priya trailed off, her eyes bright. Can I introduce you to some people? There are a few folks here who'd love to meet you. And just like that, Sarah was being pulled into a circle of former classmates she barely remembered. They knew her, though, or thought they did. Knew her accomplishments, her company, her carefully curated public image, so they asked questions. Incisive ones, thoughtful ones, about her investment strategy, her thoughts on the tech bubble, her take on remote work culture. Sarah answered them professional and warm, watching over their shoulders as Jessica moved through the room. Watching as more people approached her, read the name tag, made the connection. Watching as Jessica's initial confusion solidified into something else. She was playing along now, fully committed. When David Kim, who'd made partner at some law firm in Boston, asked Sarah Chen about the legal structure of her consulting firm, Jessica didn't correct him. She deflected, laughed, said something vague about keeping things flexible. When the conversation moved on, she excused herself and pulled out her phone, frantically Googling, trying to catch up. Sarah excused herself from Priya's circle. Just need to find the ladies' room, and found a new vantage point. The terrace doors. The night air was cooler now, sweet with the promise of rain. She stepped outside. The terrace overlooked the hotel parking lot. Uninspiring, but quiet. A few people clustered in corners, smoking cigarettes they'd supposedly quit years ago. Sarah leaned against the railing, feeling the cold metal through her silk blouse grounding. Not a fan of reunions? The voice was male. Quiet. And when Sarah turned, she found Thomas Park leaning against the wall, mostly hidden in shadow. Melissa's younger brother, though they couldn't have been more different. Where Melissa was all sharp edges and performance, Thomas had always been soft-spoken, observant. He'd been in band, played saxophone, spent lunch periods in the practice rooms. Sarah had barely known him the first time around. This time, she'd made it her business to know everyone who might matter. They're not my favorite, Sarah admitted. You? Same. He stepped forward into the light. He'd aged well, still lean, still had that thoughtful look, but there were lines around his eyes now that suggested he smiled more than he used to. Though I have to admit, this one's more interesting than I expected. Oh. Thomas nodded toward the ballroom, visible through the glass doors. There seems to be some confusion about who's who. Jessica Lynn is apparently telling people she runs a consulting firm now. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Is she? Yep, Steve Morrison. Remember him? Played lacrosse. He owns a boutique hotel chain now. He just offered her a consulting contract. 6 figures by the sound of it. Thomas's eyes were sharp when he looked at her. She's wearing your name tag. I know, I gave it to her. Why? The question was direct, curious, no judgment in it. Sarah found herself appreciating that. Because I wanted to see what would happen. And now I know. Sarah looked back through the doors, watching as Jessica, surrounded now by a small crowd, all of them impressed, all of them seeing what they wanted to see, gestured animatedly, probably trying to explain some strategy she'd read about 30 seconds ago on her phone. She's very good at being me, or at least very good at pretending to be. Thomas was quiet for a moment, then, for what it's worth, I know who you actually are. I read the Forbes piece. Impressive stuff. Thank you. Are you going to let her keep doing this? Taking credit for your work? Sarah smiled, and it felt different from the smile she'd been wearing all night. More real, more tired. She took credit for my work 18 years ago. Got a whole career out of it, actually. So this is familiar territory. Understanding dawned in Thomas's eyes. Ah. Yeah. So this is revenge. This is justice, Sarah corrected. Or maybe just education. Let her have a taste of what it's like to wear a name that comes with expectations. Let her deal with people who actually know what that name represents. Let her try to fake her way through conversations with people who've done their research. As if on cue, the terrace door opened and Jessica stumbled out, her face flushed, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. She didn't see Sarah and Thomas in the shadows. She just leaned against the railing, breathing hard, staring at her screen. Sarah could see the glow of it reflected in her eyes. Could imagine what she was looking at. Probably Sarah's LinkedIn, her company website, trying to memorize enough details to keep up the charade. The articles about her, the interviews, the awards, all the things Jessica had pretended to have 18 years ago when she'd stolen Sarah's portfolio. All the things Sarah had actually built this time around. Fuck, Jessica whispered to herself, to the parking lot, to the night. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Sarah felt something twist in her chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite pity. Something more complex, more uncomfortable. She'd imagined this moment so many times. Sarah had replayed it in her mind during the long nights of building her business, during the conferences and the pitches and the endless grinding work of making herself into someone who couldn't be overlooked. Had imagined Jessica's face when she realized what she'd taken on. But seeing it now, seeing Jessica's panic, her desperation, her phone screen casting harsh blue light on her carefully made-up face, Sarah felt hollow. Thomas touched her elbow, gentle. You okay? I don't know, Sarah said honestly. I thought I would be. Inside, someone was calling for Jessica. Sarah Chen, where'd you go? Got someone who wants to meet you. Jessica straightened, smoothed her dress, pasted on her smile. She looked at her phone one more time, then tucked it into her clutch. Took a breath, squared her shoulders. She walked back inside to keep pretending because what else could she do now? Sarah watched her go. You could stop this, Thomas said quietly. Just tell people the truth. Take the tag back. I could. But you won't. No. Sarah turned to face him. She chose to take it. She chose to keep wearing it. Every time someone calls her by my name, she has a choice to correct them. And every time, she chooses not to. Because she wants what you have. She always has. Sarah looked back through the glass, at the party, at the people, at Jessica center stage now, glowing under attention that wasn't meant for her. But wanting it and earning it are different things, and I'm curious to see how long she can keep this up before it breaks her. Thomas studied her face for a long moment. You've changed, he said finally. From high school, you're harder. Sarah thought about the hospital room, the beeping machines, the certainty that she'd wasted her life, that she'd let people like Jessica take and take and take until there was nothing left of her. Thought about waking up at 22 with all that knowledge, all that regret, all that rage, and deciding that this time, she would be the one who took what she wanted. Yeah, she said. I guess I have. They stood there in the rain-scented darkness, watching the party through the glass like it was a play, like they weren't part of it. And Sarah wondered if this was what she'd really come here for. Not revenge, not justice, but just this moment of standing outside looking in, of being the one who knew the truth while everyone else lived in comfortable lies. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. This is Steve Morrison. Got your number from the alumni directory. Jessica mentioned you might be open to consulting work. Would love to talk. Free for coffee next week. Sarah showed Thomas the screen. He let out a low whistle. He thinks he's texting you, but Jessica gave him your actual number? Apparently. What are you going to say? Sarah thought about it. Thought about taking the meeting, revealing the truth, watching Jessica's carefully constructed lie collapse. Thought about the satisfaction of it, the justice. Thought about the fact that Steve Morrison owned a boutique hotel chain, and she'd been wanting to break into the hospitality industry for months. She typed, "Happy to chat. How's Tuesday at 2 p.m.? Thomas laughed, surprised. You're actually going to meet with him? Why not? It's a good opportunity. Sarah pocketed her phone. And when he realizes I'm the real Sarah Chen, when Jessica has to explain why she was pretending to be me, well, that's her problem, not mine. Cold, efficient. Is there a difference? Sarah considered this. In her first life, she would have said yes. Would have insisted on kindness, on giving people the benefit of the doubt, on being the bigger person. Look where that had gotten her. Not anymore, she said. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The rain was coming closer. The storm broke at 11:30, right as the DJ was playing Livin' on a Prayer. Sarah stood at the bar, nursing her third glass of wine, actually drinking it this time, and watching the rain sheet against the terrace doors. The party had thinned out. People with kids had left. People with early flights. Yea, people who'd gotten what they came for and decided the rest was diminishing returns. Jessica was still there. She'd planted herself at a high-top table near the photo slideshow, surrounded by a rotating cast of former classmates who all wanted a piece of Sarah Chen. Sarah watched her deflect questions she couldn't answer, redirect conversations to safer ground, laugh that tinkling laugh that had always worked on people. Watched her check her phone under the table, frantic little glances, trying to stay ahead of the lies. It should have felt better than this. Penny for your thoughts? Sarah turned to find her old AP history teacher, Mr. Patterson, standing beside her. He'd retired 3 years ago. She knew this because she'd sent flowers to the ceremony anonymously because he'd been one of the few teachers who'd actually seen her. He looked older now, frailer, his hair completely white, but his eyes were still sharp behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Mr. Patterson, I didn't know you'd be here. They invite us old-timers to these things. Free food, free drinks, chance to see what became of you all. He ordered a whiskey, neat. I saw your Forbes profile, very impressive. Though I'm not surprised. No. You were always one of my best students. Quiet but brilliant. The paper you wrote on the Silk Road trade networks, I still use excerpts from it when I do guest lectures. He looked at her sideways. Though I notice you're not wearing your name tag tonight. Sarah's hand went to her chest, instinctive, touching the empty space. I gave it away. To Jessica Lynn. You noticed? Hard not to when everyone keeps calling her by your name. Mister. Patterson sipped his whiskey. Want to tell me why? And somehow, standing there at the bar with rain hammering outside and her old teacher beside her, Sarah found herself wanting to tell the truth. Not all of it. Not the rebirth, the second chance, the knowledge that should have been impossible. But the rest. She took something from me once, Sarah said quietly. Something important. I just wanted to see what it felt like for her to be in my shoes. And? How does it feel? Empty. Mr. Patterson made a considering noise. Revenge often does. This isn't revenge, it's justice, karma, education? He smiled, kind but sad. Whatever word you want to use, it still comes from the same place. Hurt. And hurt doesn't heal by being passed on to someone else. Well, Sarah, it just spreads. Sarah wanted to argue. Just wanted to explain that he didn't understand, couldn't understand, what it was like to die with regrets, to get a second chance, to have the power to make things right, but the words stuck in her throat, tasting like ash. On the screen behind them, the slideshow cycled to a new photo, the senior class trip to Six Flags. Sarah saw herself in the background, blurry, half out of frame, disappearing even then. I spent my first life being invisible, she said. Being the person everyone forgot, the one who did the work while other people took the credit. I'm not going to be that person again. No one's asking you to be invisible, Mr. Patterson said gently, but there's a difference between being seen and needing to watch someone else suffer. She's not suffering. She's uncomfortable. Is there a difference? The same question Thomas had asked, different context. Sarah drained her wine glass, feeling the alcohol warm and loose in her blood. I don't know anymore. Mr. Patterson patted her shoulder, the gesture paternal, worn. Figure it out, Sarah, before it costs you more than you're willing to pay. He left his half-finished whiskey on the bar and wandered off toward a group of other retired teachers, leaving Sarah alone with the bartender and the rain. Across the room, Jessica's phone rang. Sarah watched her glance at the screen, watched her face go pale. She excused herself from her admirers and hurried toward the hallway where the bathrooms were, phone pressed to her ear. Sarah followed. Not close enough to be seen, but close enough to hear. The hallway was quieter, the music muffled. Jessica had ducked into the alcove near the coat check, her back to the wall, her free hand pressed to her forehead. I know, Mom, I know, no, I understand that, but Jessica's voice was strained, tight. Mom, please, just listen. I might have a new client, a big one. Steve Morrison, he owns, no, not the Steve from high school, a different. Mom, can you please just... Sarah leaned against the wall, just out of sight, listening. I know the agency is struggling. I know we're behind on the rent, but this could change everything. This could... Jessica's voice cracked. I'm trying, okay? I'm doing everything I can. I need a little more time. Silence. Sarah could hear the faint buzz of a voice on the other end, angry, disappointed. Fine. Yes, I'll figure it out. I always do. Jessica hung up and Sarah heard the shuddering breath. The barely suppressed sob. Fuck! Sarah stepped around the corner. Jessica looked up, eyes red, mascara starting to smudge. She saw Sarah and froze, one hand still on the name tag pinned to her chest. How much did you hear? Her voice was raw. Enough. They looked at each other across the empty hallway. The DJ was playing Closing Time Now, the universal signal that the party was winding down. Appropriate. I should give this back to you. Jessica's fingers found the pin, started to undo it. This was stupid. I don't know why I... Keep it, Sarah said. Jessica's hand stilled. What? Keep it for tonight. Tomorrow, when Steve Morrison texts you, because he will, you can tell him the truth. Or you can keep the lie going. That's your choice. Why are you doing this? Jessica's voice was small now, scared. So why did you give me the tag in the first place? Sarah could have lied, could have said it was a joke, a social experiment, nothing personal, but she was tired of lies, even her own. Because 18 years ago, you stole my portfolio and used it to get a job I wanted. You built your career on my work. And I wanted you to know what it felt like to wear my name and have people expect things from you. Things you couldn't deliver? Jessica's face went through several emotions. Confusion, realization, denial, fear. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Sarah stepped closer. The internship at Morrison & Associates, marketing firm downtown. You submitted my designs, my concepts, my work. You told them it was yours. We collaborated on those. No, Jessica, I created them. You just took them. Silence. What? Jessica's hands dropped to her sides. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. How did you know? Professor Martinez told me. Years later, he'd recommended both of us. Wanted to know how we were doing. Morrison told him they'd hired you, that your portfolio was outstanding. He described the work. My work. Sarah smiled, and it felt like glass. By then, it was too late to do anything about it. You'd already built everything on that foundation. What was I going to do? Sue you? Prove it somehow? I had nothing. Sarah, But that was a different life. Sarah cut her off. This time, I built my own success. I didn't need what you stole because I created something better. And I came here tonight to watch you try to pretend to be me, to see you squirm, to get some petty satisfaction from your discomfort. Jessica was crying now, quiet tears tracking through her foundation. I'm sorry, I was desperate and I thought it wouldn't matter. I thought you wouldn't care. I know, that's what made it worse. I was so invisible to you that you didn't think it would matter. I fucked up. I know I fucked up. And God, you think I've been successful? The agency is failing. I'm drowning in debt. My mother calls me every week to remind me what a disappointment I am. I came here tonight hoping to network, to find clients, to find anything that might save me. Jessica laughed, bitter. And then you gave me your name tag, and I thought maybe I could steal from me again? No, yes, I don't know. Jessica wiped her eyes, smearing mascara. I'm a mess, Sarah. I've always been a mess. I just got really good at hiding it. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness. She wasn't ready for that. Might never be ready, but understanding maybe. The recognition that Jessica wasn't some villain in her story, just another person trying to survive, making bad choices, carrying her own weight. The thing about wearing someone else's name, Sarah said slowly, is that eventually you have to face the person underneath. And I think that's what you're really afraid of, isn't it? Not being caught in a lie, but being seen as who you actually are. Jessica was full on sobbing now, shoulders shaking. I don't even know who that is anymore. Then maybe it's time to find out. Sarah reached out, gently unpinned the name tag from Jessica's dress. The fabric was damp with tears. This is mine. You can't have it, but tomorrow, when Steve Morrison calls, you can tell him the truth. Tell him you're Jessica Lynn, you run a struggling marketing agency, and you'd love to talk about what you can actually offer him. Not what I've done, what you can do. He won't want me. Not the real me. Maybe not, or maybe he will. You won't know unless you try. Sarah held out the name tag. Jessica took it, fingers trembling, and pressed it into Sarah's palm. Their hands touched, brief and warm. I really am sorry, Jessica whispered, for what it's worth. I know, Jessica nodded, wiped her face one more time, and walked back toward the ballroom. Her red dress was wrinkled now, her hair coming loose from its pins. She looked human. Real. Sarah stood alone in the hallway, and holding the name tag that said, Sarah Chen, most likely to disappear. She could hear the DJ making last call announcements, hear the shuffle of people gathering coats and bags, saying goodbyes, making promises to stay in touch that most of them wouldn't keep. She pinned the tag to her blouse right over her heart. Then she went to find Mr. Patterson, because she owed him a thank you. Because she'd learned something tonight, even if it wasn't what she'd expected to learn. Sarah found Mr. Patterson in the parking lot, standing under an awning, waiting for his Uber. The rain had softened to a drizzle, coating everything in a fine mist that caught the parking lot lights like scattered diamonds. He looked tired, ready to go home. Mr. Patterson? He turned, smiled when he saw her. Sarah, done for the night? Almost. I wanted to... She paused, unsure how to say it. Thank you for earlier. You were right. About the revenge. About the hurt. She pulled her jacket closer, feeling the cold now. I spent so long being angry about what happened before that I forgot to be grateful for what I have now. Mr. Patterson nodded slowly. That's the trap of second chances, isn't it? We get so focused on fixing what went wrong that we forget to appreciate what went right. Sarah felt something catch in her throat. He couldn't know about the rebirth. Couldn't possibly know, but somehow he understood anyway. What if I told you, she said carefully, that I got a do-over? A chance to relive everything knowing what I know now? I'd say that's either a blessing or a curse, depending on what you do with it. Which one do you think it is, mister? So Patterson's Uber pulled up, a silver Camry with a pine tree air freshener hanging from the mirror. He opened the door but didn't get in yet. I think, he said, that the past is supposed to teach us, not trap us. And the best revenge is building something so bright that the people who hurt you have to wear sunglasses to look at it. Sarah laughed, surprised. Did you just make that up? I've had 70 years to practice wisdom. I get a few good ones. He patted her arm. You've built something remarkable, Sarah. Don't let old grudges tarnish it. And don't let success make you into the kind of person you once despised. He got into the car, and Sarah watched the taillights disappear into the rain. She stood there for a long moment, letting the drizzle settle on her skin, cold and clean. Then she went back inside one last time. The ballroom was almost empty now. The DJ was packing up his equipment. The hotel staff was clearing tables, stacking chairs. A few stragglers remained. Thomas Park was talking to the bartender. And across the room, Jessica sat alone at a high-top table, staring at her phone. Sarah walked over. Jessica looked up, wary. Her eyes were still red, but she'd fixed her makeup as best she could. I wanted to give you this, Sarah said, pulling out a business card. Her real one. If you actually want to talk about the hotel consulting thing with Steve Morrison, I can give you some pointers. No charge, consider it. Amends for tonight. Jessica took the card, turned it over in her hands. Why would you help me? Because Mr. Patterson was right. Hurt doesn't heal by being passed on. And because Sarah paused, searching for the truth. Because I remember what it was like to be drowning, to feel like nothing you did was ever enough. I don't want to be the person who watches someone else drown just because I learned to swim. Jessica's eyes filled with tears again, but she blinked them back. I don't deserve this. Probably not, but I'm giving it anyway. Sarah started to walk away, then turned back. And Jessica, I meant what I said. Tell Steve the truth. You might be surprised by what happens when you stop pretending to be someone else. She left before Jessica could respond, walking back through the ballroom where she'd spent so much of the night watching, waiting, planning. The slideshow was still running on the screen, photos of people they used to be, frozen in moments that felt both familiar and impossibly distant. There she was again, in the background of a prom photo, disappearing. But she wasn't disappearing anymore. Sarah walked out into the rain, not bothering with her jacket. Let it soak through her silk blouse, her carefully styled hair. Let it wash away the perfume and the performance and the weight of carrying 2 lifetimes in one body. Her car was parked at the far end of the lot, a Tesla, sleek and black, the kind of car she dreamed about in her first life and could easily afford now. But she didn't go to it yet. Instead, she walked to the edge of the parking lot where a small park began, where trees bent under the weight of rain and the grass smelled like earth and renewal. She pulled out her phone, pulled up her texts with Steve Morrison. She could keep the meeting, could show up on Tuesday, let him realize she was the real Sarah Chen, and to watch Jessica's lie collapse in real time. It would be satisfying. Or, she typed, Steve, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not taking on new clients right now. However, I'd like to introduce you to Jessica Lynn. She runs a marketing agency with a strong background in brand strategy, and I think she might be a good fit for what you're looking for. I'll have her reach out to you. She hit send before she could second guess it. Then she texted Jessica. I just sent Steve Morrison your name, your real name. Don't fuck it up. Sarah put her phone away and tilted her face up to the rain. It was cold, relentless, beautiful. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Not threatening anymore, just a reminder that storms were necessary, that you needed the rain to make things grow. She thought about her first life, the slow fade of it, the way she disappeared not all at once but in increments, each compromise and concession taking a little more until there was nothing left but regrets. She thought about the moment she died, alone in that hospital room, thinking I should have. And then she thought about waking up at 22, gasping with the weight of all that knowledge, all those mistakes she could avoid. She'd been so sure that the second time would be different, that she'd be harder, smarter, more ruthless, that she'd take what she wanted and never let anyone make her invisible again. And she had done that. She'd built an empire from nothing, had become the kind of person who got profiled in Forbes, who gave TED Talks, who mattered. But somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten why she'd wanted to matter in the first place. Thought not to prove something to Jessica Lynn, not to get revenge on everyone who'd overlooked her, but because she had things to say, things to build, things to contribute to the world, because she was valuable not in comparison to anyone else, but on her own terms. Sarah walked back to her car, her clothes soaked, her hair dripping. She got in, started the engine, turned the heat up high. The windows fogged immediately, cocooning her in white. She sat there for a long time watching the parking lot empty, watching the hotel lights dim as the reunion officially ended, watching her reflection in the rearview mirror, 35 years old, successful, powerful, alone. In her first life, she died alone. In this life, she'd chosen to be alone, thinking it made her stronger, thinking that needing people was weakness, that trust was a trap, stunned that the only way to avoid being hurt was to never give anyone the chance. But maybe Mr. Patterson was right. Maybe second chances weren't about fixing what went wrong. Maybe they were about learning to do it better. Sarah pulled out her phone one more time, scrolled through her contacts until she found Thomas Park. He'd given her his number before he left, along with an invitation to get coffee sometime, talk about something other than high school. She typed, "Coffee sounds good. When are you free?" Hit send. The response came fast. "Tomorrow, I know a place that makes excellent lattes and has absolutely no connection to our high school years." Sarah smiled. Perfect. She put the car in drive and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the reunion behind. The rain was letting up now. The clouds breaking apart to reveal stars. Just a few at first, then more, until the sky was scattered with light. The radio played softly, some songs she didn't recognize, and Sarah drove through streets she half remembered from 2 lifetimes of living in this city. Past her old apartment, the one she'd had in her first life, where she'd been so unhappy. Past the coffee shop where she'd worked for 3 years, saving money that never seemed like enough. Past all the ghosts of who she'd been and who she'd refused to be again. And then forward, into streets she'd never traveled before, toward a future that was hers to write. Tuesday came bright and cold, one of those early spring days where the sun promised warmth it couldn't deliver. Sarah met Thomas at the coffee shop he'd recommended, a small place in the arts district called The Grind. All exposed brick and mismatched furniture, and the kind of espresso machine that cost more than a car. He was already there when she arrived, sitting by the window with 2 lattes and an almond croissant that he'd split down the middle. "Wasn't sure if you'd show," he said as she sat down. "Why wouldn't I? Because successful people are usually too busy for coffee with random acquaintances from high school." He pushed one of the lattes toward her. "No offense. None taken, and you're not random." Sarah wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling the heat seep into her palms. "You're Melissa's brother. That makes you at least marginally interesting by association." Thomas laughed. "Melissa would love to hear that. She thinks she's fascinating." "Isn't she?" "She's exhausting. But yes, also fascinating." He took a sip of his latte. "So, did you do it?" "Do what?" "Whatever you were planning with Jessica Lynn, the name tag thing. Did it work out the way you wanted?" Sarah thought about Friday night, about Jessica crying in the hallway, about the business card she'd given her, about the text she'd sent to Steve Morrison. "Not exactly, but maybe better." "Cryptic?" "I gave her a second chance," which is ironic because Sarah stopped herself. "Because I got a second chance too. Because I know what it's like to fuck up and wish you could do it over." But she couldn't say that. Because she didn't deserve one. And yet you gave it anyway. "Someone recently reminded me that hurt doesn't heal by being passed on." Thomas nodded slowly. "Mr. Patterson, how did you know?" "Because he said the same thing to me senior year." I was furious about something. Can't even remember what now. Some slight, some betrayal that seemed enormous at the time. He told me that carrying grudges was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Thomas smiled. It's a cliché, but he made it sound profound. He's good at that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the street outside. A woman walked past with a dog on a leash. A couple argued in front of the boutique across the street. Normal life, normal people, living their one chance without the weight of hindsight. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas said. "Sure. Why did you really come to the reunion? You don't seem like the type who needs to prove anything to anyone." Sarah considered lying, considered the easy answer, the polite deflection. But something about the way Thomas was looking at her, curious, not judgmental, made her want to tell the truth. "I wanted to see if I'd really changed," she said. "I spent high school being invisible. I spent my..." She caught herself again. "My first life. I spent a long time being overlooked, and I built all this success thinking it would make me visible, make me matter, but I realized on Friday that I'm still trying to prove something to people who barely remember I exist." "And did you? Change, I mean." "I think so, just not in the way I expected." Thomas broke off a piece of croissant, considered it. "For what it's worth, I remember you. From high school. You sat 2 rows behind me in AP Gov, and you always had the best arguments in class discussions. You just never spoke loud enough for anyone to hear them." Sarah felt something warm unfurl in her chest. "I didn't think anyone noticed." "I noticed." He met her eyes. "And I always wondered what you'd be like if you let yourself be loud. Turns out, pretty successful." "Yeah, but also kind of lonely, right?" The observation was gentle but accurate, and Sarah found she couldn't argue with it. "How did you know?" "Because I spent my 20s being successful too. Built a startup, sold it, made more money than I knew what to do with. Spent all my time working, networking, building, and then one day I woke up and realized I had everything I thought I wanted and no one to share it with." Thomas smiled, rueful. "So I started over. Got a regular job teaching music at a community college, make barely anything. Love every minute of it." "No regrets?" About the money? Sometimes. About the life? Never. Sarah thought about her apartment. A penthouse in the financial district, floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, and the persistent echo of her own footsteps. She'd thought that was success. Had thought that being able to afford the view meant she'd made it, but she'd never invited anyone over. Never had dinner parties or game nights, or any of the things people did when they had lives instead of just careers. "I think I might have done this wrong," she said quietly. "Done what wrong?" "The second..." She stopped, modified. "The success thing. I focused so much on building something big that I forgot to build a life around it." Thomas reached across the table, tapped her hand once, brief and warm. "Good news is, you can start now." That's the thing about life. It's never too late to adjust course. Says the man who gave up millions to teach music. Says the man who's happy. Thomas finished his latte. "Which is worth more than millions. Trust me." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Had the call with Steve Morrison. Told him the truth. He wants to move forward. I think I'm going to cry. Thank you." Sarah showed Thomas the screen. He grinned. Plot twist. The revenge story becomes a redemption arc. Is that what this is? What else would you call it? Sarah thought about it. About Friday night, about the name tag, about watching Jessica pretend to be her and realizing that being her, being the successful, driven, untouchable Sarah Chen, wasn't actually that appealing. About Mr. Patterson's wisdom and Thomas's kindness, and the way the rain had felt on her face. Cold and clean and real. Growth, maybe, she said, or just figuring out what actually matters. And what does matter? Sarah looked around the coffee shop, at the barista making drinks with careful precision, at the couple in the corner sharing a piece of cake, at the sunlight streaming through the windows, painting everything gold. This, she said, this moment, being here, being known, not for what I've accomplished, but for who I actually am. Thomas raised his empty cup in a toast. To being known. Sarah clinked her cup against his. To being known. They stayed until the coffee shop closed for the afternoon, talking about everything and nothing. About music and business and the weird coincidences of life. About their families, their hopes. The things they'd learned and the things they were still figuring out. And when Sarah finally left, walking out into the afternoon sun, she felt lighter than she had in years. Both years. All the years she'd lived and the one she was living now. She pulled out her phone and opened her calendar. She had meetings scheduled for the next 3 months. Back to back, barely room to breathe. She'd done that deliberately, thinking that busy meant important, that every empty hour was a wasted opportunity. She started canceling. Not all of them. She had a business to run, commitments to keep, but the ones that were just performative, just there to look impressive on her schedule. The conferences she'd agreed to speak at because it seemed like what successful people did. The networking events where she'd spend 3 hours making small talk and come home exhausted and empty. She kept the things that mattered. The client meetings where she actually helped solve problems. The mentorship sessions with young consultants. The Tuesday coffee with Thomas that they'd tentatively scheduled for next week. And then she did something radical. She blocked out Friday evenings. All of them. Labeled them not available and refused to explain to anyone why. Because Friday evenings were going to be for her, for figuring out who Sarah Chen was when she wasn't performing success, when she wasn't proving anything to anyone. Maybe she'd take a cooking class. Maybe she'd volunteer somewhere. Maybe she'd just sit on her couch and read a book without feeling guilty about the emails she should be answering. Maybe she'd learn to be a person instead of just a resume. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Sarah Chen? The voice was female. Professional. Speaking. This is Rachel Morrison from Morrison Hotels, Steve's wife. He mentioned you recommended Jessica Lynn for a consulting position. Sarah's heart sank. Here it was, the moment where everything unraveled, where her impulsive kindness backfired, where I wanted to thank you, Rachel continued. We've been looking for someone who really understands brand strategy, and Jessica's insights were exactly what we needed. Steve's already talking about expanding the contract. You have excellent judgment. Sarah felt herself smile. Jessica's very talented. She spoke very highly of you too. Said you were her mentor in college? Sarah laughed. Surprised. Jessica had spun a news story, but one that was closer to the truth than the lie. or at least closer to what the truth could have been, should have been, if they'd both been different people back then. Something like that, Sarah said. They chatted for a few more minutes. Rachel wanted to know if Sarah would consider consulting for them too, if she'd be open to a conversation at least. And Sarah found herself saying yes, not because she needed another client, but because Rachel seemed genuinely kind and the project sounded interesting, and maybe it was okay to say yes to things just because they appealed to her. When she hung up, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Optimism. Real optimism, not the manufactured kind that came from hitting targets and closing deals. The kind that came from believing the future might actually be better than the past. Both pasts. All the pasts. She walked home slowly, taking the long way, noticing things. The way the light hit the buildings. The smell of bread from a bakery. The sound of children playing in a park. All the small, beautiful, ordinary things she'd been too busy to notice while she was building her empire. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a number saved as Mom. Her mother in this timeline, still alive, still healthy, still calling her every Sunday to ask if she was eating enough vegetables. Dinner this weekend? Dad wants to try that new Thai place. In her first life, her mother had died when Sarah was 30. Heart attack sudden while Sarah was at a conference in Seattle. She'd flown home for the funeral and spent the entire time thinking about all the dinners she'd skipped, all the calls she'd let go to voicemail, all the time she'd wasted thinking there would always be more time. This life, she'd made different choices, had been there for the doctor's appointments, had noticed the symptoms, had insisted on the tests that caught the blockage before it killed her, had saved her life and gotten her back and promised herself she'd never take it for granted. I'll be there. What time? 6 p.m. Love you, honey? Love you too. Sarah stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand, and felt the weight of everything she'd been carrying, all the rage and ambition and desperate need to prove herself, begin to lift. She'd spent so long being angry about what Jessica had taken from her in that first life, so long building walls and armor and a persona that couldn't be hurt because it couldn't be touched. But the thing about walls was that they kept everything out. The bad, yes, but also the good. And she was tired of living in a fortress. Epilogue. What we keep. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a different hotel ballroom, at a different event wearing a different name tag. This one said, Sarah Chen, founder, Chen Consulting Group, keynote speaker. The conference was for women entrepreneurs, and Sarah had been invited to talk about building sustainable success. She'd almost said no, almost fell back into the old pattern of thinking she was too busy, too important, had better things to do. But Thomas had talked her into it. Thomas, who'd become not just coffee every Tuesday, but also dinner sometimes and texts about random things, and someone who knew her, really knew her, and liked her anyway. You have something worth saying, he'd told her. And not just about business, about what it costs to get there, about what matters when you do. So here she was, backstage, waiting for her introduction, feeling the familiar flutter of nerves that no amount of practice ever quite eliminated. Sarah! She turned to find a young woman, mid-20s, nervous, clutching a notebook. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm speaking tomorrow and I'm terrified, and someone said you might have advice. Sarah smiled, gestured to the empty seats beside her. What's your name? Amanda. Amanda Zhao. I run a small digital marketing agency. And I'm supposed to talk about building client relationships, but I feel like such a fraud because my agency is barely hanging on, and I'm pretty sure everyone's going to see right through me and... She stopped, took a breath. Sorry, I'm rambling. You're not a fraud, Sarah said gently. You're honest, and that's actually more valuable. How do you figure? Because everyone in that audience knows what it's like to struggle. They've all had moments where they felt like frauds, where they worried they weren't enough. If you go up there and pretend everything's perfect, you'll lose them. But if you go up there and tell the truth about the struggles and the failures and the moments where you almost gave up, they'll actually hear you. Amanda looked at her notebook, covered in frantic notes. So I shouldn't pretend I have it all figured out? Do you have it all figured out? God, no. Then don't pretend you do. Sarah remembered Jessica 6 months ago, breaking down in a hallway, remembered the relief on her face when she'd finally stopped pretending. People connect with authenticity, not perfection. Amanda nodded slowly, making a note. Then she looked up, curious. "Can I ask you something? What made you decide to start your company?" Sarah thought about the hospital room, the rebirth, the desperate need to do it differently, to matter, to never be invisible again. She thought about all the ways that need had driven her and nearly destroyed her. "I wanted to prove I was worth something," she said honestly, but somewhere along the way I realized I was trying to prove it to the wrong people. The only person I really needed to prove it to was myself. "And did you? Prove it." Sarah glanced down at her name tag. Sarah Chen, founder. Not most likely to disappear. Not someone else's idea of who she should be. Just her name, her accomplishment, her truth. "Yeah," she said. "I did." A stage manager appeared, headset on, clipboard in hand. "Miss Chen, you're up in 5. Sarah stood, smoothed her dress. Emerald green, bold, nothing like the safe blacks and grays she used to hide in. "You're going to do great tomorrow, Amanda. Just remember, they're not expecting perfection. They're expecting honesty." "Thank you." Amanda stood too, impulsively hugged her. "Really, thank you." Sarah hugged her back, feeling the sincerity of it, the human connection. "Anytime." She walked toward the stage, hearing the swell of applause as the moderator began her introduction, hearing her accomplishments listed, her credentials, all the things she'd built in this second life. They sounded impressive when someone else said them. They sounded real. But what felt most real was the text from Thomas that buzzed in her pocket. "Knock 'em dead. Dinner after to celebrate?" And the email from her mother. "So proud of you, honey. Recording it to watch later?" And the message from Jessica. "Good luck today. The Morrison contract is going amazing, BTW. I owe you several drinks." Sarah stepped onto the stage, into the spotlight, and for once in both her lives, she didn't feel like she was disappearing. The room was full of women, entrepreneurs, dreamers, fighters, women who'd built something from nothing, who'd faced failure and gotten back up. So who'd learned that success wasn't about being perfect, but about being persistent. Women like she'd been in that first life, like she'd made herself become in this one. "Thank you all for having me," Sarah began, her voice steady, amplified. "I want to start by telling you about a reunion I went to 6 months ago, and a name tag I gave away, and what it taught me about who we pretend to be versus who we actually are." She told them about Jessica, about the stolen portfolio and the years of resentment, about the revenge that had turned into something else. Understanding, maybe, or at least the beginning of forgiveness. She told them about Mr. Patterson's wisdom, and Thomas's friendship and the coffee shop where she'd learned that being successful and being happy weren't the same thing. She told them about her mother, still alive because Sarah had known to push for tests, to insist on treatment, about second chances that came in unexpected forms. She didn't tell them about the rebirth, about dying at 47 and waking up at 22. That was a truth too strange to share, too precious to expose. But she told them everything else. And when she finished, when the applause rose like a wave, she looked out at all those faces, some young, some old, all of them carrying their own weight, their own stories, their own chances. And she felt it. Connection, purpose, peace, not the hollow satisfaction of revenge or the brittle armor of success, but something warmer, something sustainable, something worth keeping. After the speech, there was a cocktail hour. Sarah worked the room, but differently now. Not performing, not collecting contacts like trophies. Just talking to people. Really talking. Learning their stories, sharing her own, finding common ground. And when Amanda found her again, asking if they could exchange information, if maybe Sarah would consider mentoring her. Sarah said yes without hesitation. "Really?" Amanda's face lit up. "You have time for that?" Sarah thought about her calendar, which was still full but no longer suffocating. Thought about the Friday evenings she'd protected, the space she'd carved out for life instead of just work. "I'll make time," she said. Because that was the thing about second chances, about do-overs, about all the ways life gave you opportunities to get it right. You had to choose what mattered, had to decide what you wanted to build and what you wanted to burn down and what you wanted to keep, and Sarah had decided to keep the good things. The real things, the human things. She left the conference that night and met Thomas for dinner at a small Italian place he'd discovered. They talked about everything and nothing, the way they always did now. And when he reached across the table and took her hand, casual, comfortable, like they'd done this 1,000 times before, even though it was new every time, she didn't pull away. "Good speech," he said. "You watched?" "Live streamed it. Very inspiring. I may have cried a little during the part about your mom." "Sap. Guilty." He squeezed her hand. "But seriously, I'm proud of you for doing the hard thing, for being honest about it." "It felt good," Sarah admitted. "Scary, but good. The best things usually are." They finished dinner and walked out into the spring night. The city was alive with light and sound and movement, and Sarah felt part of it now instead of separate from it. Felt connected to the world in a way she never had before. Not in her first life, when she'd been too invisible, and not in the early part of this life, when she'd been too defended. Her phone buzzed. An email from the conference organizers. "Amazing response to your keynote. Would you consider doing a follow-up workshop series? We've had 200 plus requests already." Sarah showed Thomas the screen. "What do you think? Do you want to do it?" "I think so. It felt good helping Amanda. And if I can help more people like her, then do it." Thomas smiled. "You don't need my permission, you know. You're allowed to say yes to things that make you happy." Sarah thought about that. About permission and happiness, and all the ways she denied herself both in the name of success, in the name of revenge, in the name of proving something to people who didn't matter. "I'm still learning that," she said. "We all are." They walked through the city until they reached Sarah's building. Thomas didn't ask to come up, and Sarah didn't invite him. They were taking things slow, figuring out what this was, what it could be. But before he left, he kissed her on the forehead, gentle and warm. "See you Tuesday," he said. "Tuesday, coffee and existential crisis. My favorite combination." Sarah watched him walk away, then rode the elevator up to her penthouse. The space still echoed, still felt too big for one person. But she'd started making changes, had bought plants that needed tending, had commissioned art from local artists, had even adopted a cat that now wound around her ankles, demanding dinner. She fed the cat, Mochi, named by Thomas, who'd helped her pick him out from the shelter, and poured herself a glass of wine. Then she stood at the window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the reunion, thinking about Jessica Lynn, who'd texted her last week. "Hired my first employee. A real one, not an intern. I think I'm actually building something legitimate." Thinking about Mr. Patterson, who'd sent her a card after seeing her TED Talk. "Proud of you, Sarah. You're lighting up rooms these days." Thinking about her name tag, most likely to disappear, which she'd kept. She took it out sometimes, looked at it, remembered who she'd been and who she'd refused to become. And thinking about the new name tag, the one from today, which sat on her desk. Sarah Chen, keynote speaker. She'd kept that one too. Not because she needed the validation, but because it reminded her she'd done this, had built something real, something good, had transformed pain into purpose, anger into action, bitterness into something that actually helped people. She'd taken her second chance and made it count. Sarah picked up her phone, pulled up her mom's number, and called. "Honey, I just watched your speech. You were wonderful." "Thanks, Mom. I recorded it for your father. He's going to watch it tomorrow after his golf game. He'll be so proud." "I'm proud of me too," Sarah said, and meant it. They talked for an hour, about nothing important, about everything important, about her mom's garden and her dad's golf game and the Thai restaurant they'd discovered, and when was Sarah coming to visit again? And when Sarah finally hung up, when she finished her wine and got ready for bed, she felt something she hadn't felt in either of her lives until now. Content. Not perfect, not problem-free, but content in the knowledge that she was building something worth building. Not just a business or a reputation, but a life. A real life, with real connections, with room for joy and mess, and all the beautiful, complicated things that made existence worthwhile. She climbed into bed, Mochi curling up beside her, purring like a small engine. Outside, the city hummed with its own life, its own stories, its own second chances and first chances and chances not yet taken. And Sarah Chen, once voted most likely to disappear, now a woman who'd learned to be seen, who'd learned to be real, who'd learned that the best revenge was building something so bright that everyone had to acknowledge it, including yourself, closed her eyes and slept. Dreamless, peaceful, ready for whatever came next. Because that was the thing about life. about second chances, about all of it. You couldn't control what happened to you, but you could control what you built from it. And Sarah had built something worth keeping.